Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's panel. My name is Colleen Carroll, and I serve as the NXUnite lead at Nexus Marketing and will be your moderator for today's panel session. Our topic today is operation efficiency, streamlining processes for associations, and I am super excited to learn from this group of panelists. But as usual, before we jump in and get started, I do have a few quick logistics to cover. NXUnite by Nexus Marketing serves as a powerful community resource designed to foster connections and facilitate lasting relationships within the mission-driven sector. On NXUnite, you can find upcoming industry events, suggested influencers to follow, trusted solutions, and cause-driven podcasts. NXUnite also hosts webinars, demos, and of course, panels with experts such as the lovely folks here with me today. Today's hour-long panel will include time both for questions curated by my team and questions from you all, our fantastic audience. So if you are joining us live, we would greatly appreciate it if you submitted those questions that you have related to our topic of association operations and efficiency, and we'll use the second portion of the panel to address as many as we possibly can. If you have come in today with a particular topic in mind that you are really hoping we're going to discuss, it would be totally appropriate to submit your question right now, either in the chat or in the questions tab, as the more questions we get earlier on in the session, the more likely we'll be able to get to your question and a larger number of audience questions. So again, feel free to submit those questions at any time. If at any point you're having any technical difficulties or have any logistics questions, please reach out in the chat. My colleague Malou is here under the Team NXUnite username and will be there to assist. So give a little holler in the chat, let us know what's happening, and we'll figure out how to get you back on and enjoying the session as quickly as possible. I did also want to mention that this panel session is being recorded. So if you get to the end and the insight you heard is just so fantastic, you need to hear it a second time right away. That is wonderful news. It's going to automatically be in your email inbox at the end of the session. Give it a few minutes after we wrap up and you'll have access to that recording. It will also continue to be accessible on the NXUnite website. So if you have any friends in the industry who you're like, can't believe they missed it, they needed to be there, feel free to share that same landing page that you used to register and you'll be able to access the recording. All right, finally, before I introduce today's panelists, I do want to give a big thank you to our audience, whether you are joining us live or you're watching the recording a day from now, a week from now, a month from now. Thank you so much for being part of our NXUnite community and for learning with us. We can't wait to discuss more with you about association operations. And I do hope that if you are joining us live, you will submit those questions so we can address the topics most relevant to you and your team. All right, to begin with our introductions, I'd first like to introduce Mark Prevost, who is the SVP of Growth at Bill Highway. He has an unrelenting passion for helping nonprofit organizations find impactful solutions. Mark brings every organization he works with through an in-depth discovery process to uncover internal obstacles and identify ways to leverage technology to streamline operations. He is known for his intuitive ability to problem solve creatively, helping organizations focus on their mission, multiply their impact, and grow. Mark, thank you so much for being with us today.
Hi, Colleen. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Also here with us today is Michelle Bryan, who is the Vice President of Marketing at Matchbox Virtual Media. She helps clients and partners make connections that deepen engagement, grow revenue, and drive collaborative learning. Michelle is a creative and strategic thinker, and her empathy gives her a keen understanding of need. She has found her professional home in the association community, a network of people working to help their peers and dedicated to lifelong learning. Michelle, thanks for joining us.
I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Colleen.
Thank you. Finally, here with us today is Todd Tolbear, who is the Director of Associations and Nonprofits at UDIG, a technology consulting company that enables businesses with modern solutions through software, data, and intelligent automation. Todd prides himself on being a dynamic and creative business leader and trusted executive with extensive experience delivering transformative internal and customer-facing solutions that support business growth. Thanks for being here, Todd.
Good afternoon, all. And it's Todd Tolbert.
Thank you. I forgot to ask in advance, and I was like, I winged it and I got it wrong. So I am sorry about that, Todd.
Although it might have been cool to be related to Mr. Colbert.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here, Todd. And it is time for us to jump in and get started. And actually, Mark, I'm going to have you start us off with our very first question. What does an efficient association look like today, and how do we get there?
So that's a big question, right? But it's a question I love, actually, because we're all here because we care about organizations that have missions, right? And so the idea is, if we're efficient, then what flows out of that is we can accomplish that mission more effectively, and we can have more impact on the communities that we serve, and we create this kind of virtuous, upward cycle as a result of being more efficient. So for me, I think a lot of people, when they start talking about efficiency, the first thing that we think about is staff efficiency, right? So how can we help our staff to be more efficient? And that's important, but I would encourage us not just to stick there, but to think about, well, how do we give an efficient experience to our members as well, right? So members are having a brand experience, with our association that we want to, be worthy of the brand that we want to put out there. So staff efficiency, member efficiency, and then if you're an association that has chapters, now we blow that up to a whole new level. And how do you help your chapter leaders to be efficient, right? Because they're nurses or teachers or real estate agents or whatever that they might be, trying to do their best to help deliver the mission of the association to their members, right? And so there's a lot of areas where efficiency comes into play. So the good thing about that is we have the opportunity to really have an impact. But I just want to set the stage that I think we should be thinking very holistically when we talk about efficiency. So for me, one of the things that I think about is automation. So associations, I guess like any organization, have a lot of tasks, right? So a member joins and there's 7 things that we have to do. Maybe we have to send them a welcome email, or maybe we have to invite them to a chapter, or maybe we want to invite them to be on a committee. How can we leverage technology to automate what were heretofore manual tasks that that staff had to do before, or connected systems, right? So we see in our business, a number of associations might have a core system like an AMS, but then they might use a third-party marketing or email marketing system, right? And sometimes they have to download lists from their AMS, upload them into their email marketing system, or then take data from their email marketing system and put it back to a member's profile, right? So how can we create bi-directional integrations that if I update something in one area, it automatically updates, those other systems that need to be impacted as well. So technology, automation, connected systems, I think a centralized data hub, so that we don't have disparate data in all different places. And I'm sure we're going to talk a lot about these things. I'm just introducing some topics, right? How about process design? How about journey mapping, right? What are our processes today, and how can we create efficiencies in our processes? And whether that's the journey of joining as a new member, or what staff does, when they put an event on, or whatever that might be. To me, looking holistically at different areas to impact efficiency is a place to start.
Thank you so much, Mark, for starting us off there. Before we hear from our other 2 panelists, I want to quickly let our audience know that we have had a poll go live where we've asked you all, what do you see as the hallmark of an efficient association? So if you would like to contribute to the conversation, let us know where you're coming to this conversation from. Please feel free to go fill out that poll now. All right, Michelle, same question over to you. What do you think is an efficient association, and what does it look like, and how can we get there?
I think it's very hard to follow that answer from Mark, to be honest with you. You kind of touched on all the bases there. But yeah, I mean, I think the core of what Mark was saying is, trying to balance operational efficiency with the member experience, and making sure, like at the end of the day, as he said, an efficient association is one that can effectively serve its members. A lot of that does come back to things like data. And not just data like in terms of statistics and quantitative data, like how many people attended our webinars or our learning sessions online or that sort of thing. But I think one of the key things for me in being an efficient association is probably to step kind of beyond that and look at how the association is ready to react. And I think more and more we've seen that, especially in this last year, where things have been changing so fast with things like the advent of AI and things like that. And the associations that are going to survive this, next big change that's come at us so quickly after all that huge change in the pandemic are the ones that are ready to react. The associations that came through the pandemic better off or the same as they were before the pandemic started were the ones that were ready to adopt technologies to help them to deliver their online learning or to do town halls or to be able to connect with their members. And I think that, we need to obviously, with all caution that's necessary for trying out new things, especially like untested, proven things like AI. Like you have to have that in the back of your mind, but being ready to experiment and being ready to react and to give the members a voice in that, to hear what they're saying and what they're asking for, and to be able to respond to those needs. I think that's probably the key to it. Is for me, that's it. It's that open-mindedness, ready to react. That's how you be efficient in serving members' needs.
Great. Thank you, Michelle. All right, Todd, you know what question's coming your way. Thoughts on what an efficient association looks like?
Yeah, I think Mark and Michelle kicked us off in the right direction. And since we all three work at some sort of technology organization, certainly those things they've talked about are in the wheelhouse, right? We certainly need to look at those. I spent a bunch of years as the operations executive for a couple of associations. And so I think a bit about the culture as well, right? So taking it up just a little bit, a level there. So I like to think of four things there. The first is focus, right? Is our organization member-based or is it mission-based? But in either case, it has to be member or mission-centric, right? If we're that membership organization, the needs of the members, that has to be first. It has to be what we're working towards first, and our operations need to coalesce around those, right? Placing those interest and engagement at the center of the operations will help to provide those valuable experiences that Mark was talking about. If you're a mission-based organization, like conservation or something like that, then the movement of that mission should be in all of the operations. Well, how are we tracking that? What are we doing against it? How are we showing that we're making the right moves? The second thing is adaptability. I think that from a culture perspective, we need to bring in that idea for everybody that things are going to change. They always do. We hated the P word during the pandemic of pivot. We have to pivot from this or pivot to that or all of that. But those organizations that were able to do that easiest are the ones that got back to the business of what they were trying to accomplish quickly. So they were adaptable. Innovation. I think sometimes we forget about this in associations. We've got the things that we're doing and we do those over and over, and we're going to the annual meeting and we're doing this webinar and all that, but we rarely have time to think about what else could we be doing. And I think we got to give ourselves an opportunity to look around and see what can happen from that. And that in a lot of ways comes from looking at modern tools and processes and making sure that we can do things as quickly and efficiently as they can. As a consultant, I certainly see people say, well, our business is different than all the other associations out there. And look, there are aspects of it that are, but in a lot of cases, there's a lot of similarity, and those similarities can then become efficiencies from tools and things you're using. And then last is relevance and impact. And there's great books written about the relevance, and every time you go to an ASAE event, you'll find Road to Relevance or I can't remember what the other one's called, but something along those lines. But that impact, that relevance, these organizations can show how they positively impact their industries and or the professionals, and then that helps them have a leg up in recruiting, in renewal, in value, demonstrating the value of their membership to potential members, younger members, mid-career, early career folks. So those 4 areas, just as a culture perspective, before we jump into the technology and process and data and all of that, which are all certainly things we should and could talk about today.
Thank you, Todd. All right, checking in on that poll again, we asked you all, what do you see as the hallmark of an efficient association? 50% of you said clear and streamlined communication with members, 33% said effective use of technology and automation, and 17% said data-driven decision-making for strategic planning. And a grand total of no one said quick response to member inquiries and concerns. So thank you all so much for filling that out. All right, Michelle, I'm going to have you start us off with our next question. How can associations effectively balance the need for streamlined processes with the ever-evolving landscape of member expectations and technology?
This is such a tough one. I was really hoping you wouldn't come to me first on this one, but I'm going to give it my best shot. I think, it comes back that poll kind of says it all, really, doesn't it? Like clear communication with the members. And I think trying to remember that that's a two-way process, So if we're trying to understand member expectations, especially around technologies or changes, you need to be communicating with them openly, and you need to have ways to gather feedback from them, whether it's, by surveys or better yet by, open meetings where like you can actually have like a town hall discussion with them and get their voice and incorporate that into your planning. And to be open with them about what you are hoping to achieve, or what you'd like to bring to them. We've been talking with an association that is planning an AI initiative. And I think it's really cool the way that they have been approaching this, because they're thinking about it really strategically and really kind of planning it out. They don't want to go to their members until they fully understand it themselves. Their plan is to set up a working group within the team and get them up to speed on different AI tools that are out there and different risks and concerns and guidelines that they might want to set for their organization, and then have that working group actually educate the rest of their team in the association, and begin a whole organization conversation around it, and then use those same processes and the learnings that they've done from that process to then set up something similar for their membership. And I think that's a really great way to think about it, because they can experiment kind of in the safety of their own organization, and they can, get internal feedback. We all have the same concerns as our members when it comes to new things like this, and how it's going to affect our jobs or how it's going to affect our profession. So I think it's a really neat idea that they're thinking it through so carefully and giving themselves the space to explore and understand, and then go to the members and guide them through that, which is really what the members are looking for them. So I think that's a great example of trying to achieve that balance, which is a very, very tricky thing to do.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I'm sorry for springing that on you first, but you did a great job. We did have another poll go live where we've asked you all, have you found it challenging to balance the efficiency and being adaptable? If you'd like to let us know kind of your experience with this topic, feel free to go fill out that poll. All right, Todd, over to you. How can we make that balance of a streamlined process with the ever-evolving need to be adaptable and ready for new changes?
Well, I think Michelle jumped right into the right end of the pool. It's what I like to think of as a feedback loop, right? Which starts through open channels of communication, and that's a very important part. The survey, the poll certainly supports that. One of the tricky things in associations that we don't always forget, but we don't always keep front of mind, and that is relationship building is important, right? Keeping relationships tight and close while making sure you have communications is the backbone of doing these things. And I think even even running the operations of an association, you still have to have that transparency to say, this is why we're doing these things, why we're putting these policies into place, or why we're doing what we're doing. It's just the core of what good associations do. And, one way to do that is to make sure that you continue to bring members into the conversation, right? Whether it's focus groups or cohorts of people, or having advisory councils in some cases, but you can hear what their ideas are. And I like to do those in good sized groups. I don't know what that means, but 25, 30, something like that, because they need to hear each other's ideas. And most of the time they'll start to coalesce around, well, my idea was this and your idea was that, but together it's one idea, and we can work on those things together. And that helps the staff to start to figure out what to focus on, right? And we can talk about operations, but it's, staff doing things for the betterment of the organization and the community is what operations are about. Which kind of leads on to the technology part of the question is, to me, the reasons for an association to have someone on staff to stay current on technology is because it's the great enabler of those operations, right? It's both the operations of the interface between the association and the member themselves, but it's also the people in the back room that are having to get things done, transactions and all of those types of things. We don't always have to adopt the latest and greatest technology to get benefit from that. Well, I think in the question, it's ever-changing landscape, but we can learn from what's possible and then apply that to our business and our operations. Sometimes just a change in processes, right, with the tools that we have can make a significant impact on the organization and the business. And, there's plenty of certain examples out there of doing those things. But I think it really comes back to understanding what technology can do. In Michelle's example about folks talking about what to do with AI, if you don't have someone on your staff, or someone's, I would think there should be more, but at least somebody who's out there thinking about what AI could do for your organization. So when the day comes that the executive director or the board or whomever walks up and says, tell me what AI can do for our organization, I think you're doing your community a disservice, because it's coming. If it hasn't already happened, it's certainly coming for sure.
Thank you, Todd. All right, Mark, over to you. Thoughts on that balance of the need for streamlined processes and the changing expectations and technology?
Yeah, so it's fun. It's fun to go last because you get to hear what your colleagues are sharing, and I think this is a great discussion. And I'd like to kind of pick up where Todd left off. So I don't think these are opposites. I don't think the need for continued streamlined processes and technologies are at odds with each other. I think your technology ought to enable you to have continuously evolving and more efficient processes. And so, I'm not here to promote, Bill Highway businesses, but just let me speak, just from personal experience for a minute, right? So Bill Highway has two solutions for the association market. One is an AMS called Impexium, and then another is specific for chapter-based organizations. We tackled this question, Colleen, head on, in that on both of those two different platforms, we keep all of our clients on the same and latest version of our software. So let's talk about just the AMS market, for example. There are, think of legacy AMS systems that have been around for 25 years and they're highly customized and people spend a lot of money to keep them up and running. And what happens is you go through an upgrade process every so many years or whatever, and it costs you money to do that. And it's a project and it takes a lot of time. Impexium went and kind of flipped that on its head and said, we're going to have all of our clients on the same software, and it's always going to be the latest version. So we're in effect kind of future-proofing the organization as technology evolves, right? So I've got a cell phone here. we all get over-the-air updates, right? And so the cell phone technology grows and they push it out. We all benefit from that. So we do that at Impexium the same way with our AMS. So clients that signed up 4 years ago today now have the latest version of our software without having to do anything. And they're using things like AI and modern business analytics, right? And so for us, AI can say, what should our membership be? And what, are we going through a period of decline, or whatever questions you want to ask the data, we can help to predict and forecast that so we can make data-driven decisions. But the technology that underlies that is enabling those efficiencies just because it's good technology, right? So I don't think that, I think that they're not at odds with each other, but I think your technology should enable the continuing evolution of better processes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mark. All right. Returning to that poll, again, we asked you all, have you found it challenging to balance efficiency and being adaptable? 60% of you said it can be a struggle, but we're working on it. 20% said, yes, it's challenging to balance efficiency and adaptation. And 20% said somewhat, but we have processes in place to adapt. So thank you all so much for filling that out. It seems that, once again, no one said, no, we're efficient and we're responsive and we're all good. So I hope that gives you, if anything, a little confidence that you're not alone in not being flawless. So I think that's a good place for us all to be. All right, Todd, I'm going to have you start us off with our next question. What emerging technologies or software solutions do you see as game changers for associations aiming to streamline their operations?
Yeah, a couple of thoughts on that. Before we dive in, I just want to comment on the poll there. I think that's awesome. I wish we had this for from 3, 4, 5 years ago to start to look to see how we've moved that needle, because I personally know I've worked in organizations, 25-year-old and older organizations go, well, we just do what we do, right? We don't think about how do we adapt that or make it better or faster or any of those things. So it's good to hear that people are thinking that we have a way to do that, right? And that's really all you're looking for, that balance. I love that word in there. So kudos to those associations and the leaders and the people who are working in them to making sure that's happened. When I saw this question, I thought of it, well, here's our tee up for artificial intelligence, but we've already gotten there. So, what are those solutions and the game changers and the things that are coming down the pipe? I think Mark hit the nail on the head, and I've said this in other forums and other places I speak. The so what for me about artificial intelligence is that companies like Mark's and like Microsoft and like Google and all of these other things that we use is that they are figuring out how to put that intelligence into their system, and I don't have to go shopping for it separately, right? Because that's where I think association professionals, not that they'd get off the rails, but they would get to the point where it's like, well, why do I care? I don't want to go shopping for that. What I want is the tools that are already making me efficient. I want them to have more efficient capabilities, right? And so if they don't, or if they're not going to, which would be silly, but if they're not, then that's what I need to know, because then I might need to think about finding myself another tool, another partner, another way to do what I do, because we are looking for that stuff to be, joined into what we do already. And my big example always is Grammarly. I don't know how many folks use Grammarly, but if you write like I do, it's a game changer, right? And I haven't had it forever. Maybe the last 3-4 years I've used Grammarly, but it's a complete game changer. And if you don't believe that's artificial intelligence in there, then you're kind of, missing the point of large language models and things like that. But that's something that you expect to get better over time. Learn how you write, look at your stuff, because you get that subscription and it does look at what you write. So I've always been of the mentality that the AI is going to come in and it's going to be part of our tools. There are going to be situations where you do need to go look at another tool because of AI. And I think a great example colleague gave in another conversation was that he took all of the articles from their magazine in their association, took all of the articles for the last 5 years, and he put them into I don't know if it was Chat GPT, but it was one of the AI large models. He put all this stuff in there. And while that was churning along and doing what it does, he pulled up his website of his association and said, okay, I want to build a marketing plan for my brand new association. Just got started. I've got, 10 staffers. We're decently funded and we're getting going, and I want to do this. He said that it took him a grand total of about 3 weeks with many hundreds of hours trying to figure out everything that he needed just by looking at those articles from the website. He then went to ChatGPT or whatever the AI model was using, and literally within an hour, he had a better answer, right? And this is his own data, his own technology, not his own technology, but his own data and his own wording and how they speak and what they talked about. And in an hour, he was able to create what he thought was a better marketing plan for this association from the same content, right? From the same stuff. So there's a situation where you might go looking for a tool that's not already built into your systems. I think the last thing I would say in this is game changers for associations to streamline their operations is, Mark brought up AMS. This is still one of those areas that I think we've got to get our brains around. How do we get that data where it needs to be, right? Mark talked about the integrations and moving data in and out. Well, AMS is not a data warehouse. So, taking unstructured content and trying to move it into the AMS is probably not a good utilization of the AMS technology, and might not be able to do it anyway. So I think we still have an opportunity there in the association space to really be thinking about how we can streamline the efficiency of member management, transaction management, those things that are the core of what we do, so that we're not spending as much time and money just on that AMS, but on what we really need to accomplish.
Thank you, Todd. All right, Mark, over to you. Thoughts on what those game changers are for those associations aiming to streamline their operations?
Yeah, so for me, it's data and how we access data, how we make data actionable, and how we use it, right? And so, again, picking up on where Todd left off, and I know this isn't a conversation about AMSs, but since every association, at least the majority of associations that I'm aware of use an AMS, let's just talk about that for a minute, right? So Bill Highway's AMS solution, Impexium, we have infused Microsoft technology throughout the entire solution so that no one has to go out and shop for it separately. So it's rare that you'll find an association that has a 50-person IT staff, right? So you may have 50 staff at your association and 3 of them work in IT, right? And so how do we enable the business users not to have to go to IT and say, hey, I need a new report created. Can you build it for me? Because you know SQL and you know how to write a report, right? So what we did at Impexium is all of our reports can be built in just regular common English language drop downs and so forth. By the way, Microsoft is investing by far the leader in investing in AI technologies, business analytics technologies, more than Salesforce, more than Amazon. So with Impexium as an AMS, we have the ability to provide access to a data lake or a data warehouse, Todd, where you can bring in data from email marketing systems and other systems and then analyze it together, right, as opposed to separately. Our Bill Highway side of our business with our chapter performance solution, how many associations that have chapters have absolutely no idea how members are engaging at their local chapters, right? So we all talk about the importance of member engagement, right? And we got to measure member engagement, because if we don't measure it, we can't have an impact on it. But the only thing that we measure is the data that happens in our AMS, right? And so we've got 100 chapters and they're having events and we're relying upon those chapters to help serve our members, but we have no clue as to what they're doing, right? So when they're using our Bill Highway chapter solution, we can bring that data in. So now I'm measuring member engagement throughout the entire, the entire association ecosystem not just what happens, through headquarters. So we use another technology in Impexium that's called Microsoft Power Automate. And think of a trigger and an action, right? So Power Automate says, okay, this just happened. Instead of staff now having to go and check off a list of 7 different things that they now have to do, we allow the AMS to automatically do those for them through the technology without an individual having to do it. So to those that might say, well, Mark, that sounds great, but we can't afford that new technology. I have a different perspective on that, and I think I have some insight and experience to back this up. But it would not surprise me when you look at the cost of new technology that's more efficient, more streamlined. I would be surprised if the costs for that new technology are not somewhat comparable to what you're paying now to keep an old system up and running, to keep rebuilding and customizing and fixing it, plus all the staff that you're required to have, manual person or man or woman hours to do those things that technology can do. So when you look at that kind of hard cost and soft cost investment, how you serve your members, how serving members causes member retention to grow up, which causes revenue to go up, right? There's a lot of things that come out of that. But so I am a technology person, but I think that technology is the foundation to how you begin to fuel all of this and prop it up.
Thank you, Mark. All right, Michelle, thoughts on those game changers for our associations?
So I might turn this on its head a little bit in that I have a couple in my notes here that I was going to share that I think are really cool and game changing. But what I realized is that both of them actually, the tools that I was going to mention, they help to bring out the human element. And I think that that's the game changing element that associations need to be focused on. For years, I worked at an LMS company and we integrated with multiple different AMS systems and we built those integrations ourselves. So we were very aware of the difficulties and intricacies of getting the right data where it needed to be at the right time. But also very aware that a lot of associations were not necessarily approaching the adoption of a new technology like a learning management system from kind of like a rounded, what is the data that we need to do our jobs effectively kind of approach. So we often had, like an association would work with us and we would help to build the data flows between the AMS and the LMS and the workflows within the LMS that would help them to get the data they needed from those online learning programs. And then, maybe a month or two in, they would come to us and they go, we just realized that we need this report because we need this data to help us. And it was something that they hadn't done was approach the project of adopting the technology from the strategic need. Like what is the data that lets you do your job properly? What is the data that you need to understand what your members are doing and how you best serve them? And so I think rather than focus on the different kinds of technologies that you can adopt and how they might be game changing, the focus needs to be on the human element. What do our members need? How do we provide value to them? How do we actually achieve that efficiency in our job, by communicating clearly with them? Maybe it's like incorporating tools that let you reach more of your members, that let you, hear from more of them, whether it's a quick question that you throw out that lets them kind of answer it very quickly and move on with the rest of their day, or whether you're inviting them to take part in some sort of like online collaboration meeting where you all kind of ideate on what you want from the association or anything like that. But the important thing needs to be the bringing together of the members and looking strategically at the tools that lets you do that and do your job to serve them most effectively.
Can I add on just real quick? Because I, Michelle, what you shared about the human element, I love. And so Bill Highway and Impexium, we're customers or clients of Matchbox Virtual Media. And I'll share how they have helped us bring in the human element. So when we host an event, which we do regularly, we might host that in DC or Chicago or wherever. And in the old days, if you couldn't come, you didn't attend, right? And then we started evolving to, well, how do we do, how do we do this combination of in-person and virtual events? And if you remember, COVID started first, pushing people to consider that, and it was clunky. Like as an not in-person participant in an in-person event, I always felt like, I'm just kind of listening in, right? And so again, I'm not trying to give a commercial here for Michelle, but your technology, the way that you allow people to be right there in the room with us, asking questions, participating on a big screen that we always, have up in the room as if they were sitting in the table next to me, is phenomenal. And the way that you guys have the ability to just send people to breakouts, right? Because I love small interactions. And how do you do that when you have people that are, that are virtual? And so again, I'm not trying to give a commercial here for Matchbox, but that technology enables you to have that human element in at least for us at Impex Bill Highway in events, unlike we were ever able to have before. And Michelle, I don't even know all of what your whole solution set is, but I can tell you that one part that we use regularly is so impressive to me. So, and that's a great, I think it's a great case of how technology enables the human interaction that we all want to have.
Thank you so
Michelle.
much. I actually can't wait to tell that back to the team. That's really sweet and lovely to hear. So thank you.
Wonderful. All right, Michelle, I'm actually going to stick with you for our next question. How do you recommend tailoring processes and improvements to suit the unique needs of different associations? As someone mentioned earlier, every association thinks they're totally unique and no one else is quite like them.
Yeah. I actually, this is one of the questions that I was most looking forward to, actually, because we ended up actually doing a session at ASC Annual this year where we shared the story of the journey that we went on to kind of streamline some of our process improvements, and kind of what the outcome was for us. And it was really interesting to see how well it resonated with the room. So obviously we're not an association, we're a technology company, but we're a small team and all of us wear many hats. And so like associations who I just respect so much for all of the programs that they managed to run simultaneously, the efficiency is key. So we had a staff member who is amazing and wonderful at her job and just is able to contribute so much to our clients and to our team. But she was really not happy because she was stuck doing a lot of kind of repetitive, low-level tasks that have to be done to enable us to do what we do. And we just realized that realistically, we were actually going to lose her if we kind of didn't find a way to help her to kind of step up from that. So what we did was we had a task we called automating Nina, and we asked her to track her time for 2 weeks and to note how much time she was spending on different tasks. And when we did that, we realized how much of that was kind of like those tedious, kind of low-level, repetitive tasks, like setting up Zoom rooms and all of those things for all the different events and stuff like that. And we also then, when we saw her list, asked her if she would rate her enjoyment of those tasks from like a -3 to a +3. And what we saw when she did that was that all the ones that she rated -3 were easily automated. And so we sought to find ways whether we could either build that into our own platform or whether we could find tools that would help us to achieve those things, that we could take those off her plate. And we set up a process by which we actually kind of went through systematically and ticked them all off and made sure that we could take those low-level repetitive tasks off her plate and then help her to have the time to focus on her own development and step up into higher level tasks that not only were more enjoyable for her, but to be perfectly honest, more beneficial to us as an organization and more beneficial to our customers. And so I think that kind of process, any association could do something very similar. It's super easy. All it took was a spreadsheet to get started. But just taking that time to actually look at what you're doing and how you're doing it, and then to kind of see if there are ways, like Todd said earlier, even with the tools that you have, that these things could be done better. Or are there other tools out there that you might be able to pull into your stack set to help you achieve them in a way that kind of frees up your staff? But again, it's for me, it wasn't just the process outcome and the efficiency. It was actually the ability to allow Nina to kind of really have that space to grow and develop and take on more challenging things. And I think that there's so much talk with AI coming in about how it's going to improve efficiency, but it's going to take our jobs. And I would love to see that flipped on its head and say, well, by adopting some of these tools or improving your processes in these ways, how can you step up and actually do your job better? How can you have a chance to grow in your job and actually, take advantage of this for you to move on and grow higher,
Thank you so much, Michelle. Todd, over to you. Thoughts how we can make sure our processes are really suiting the needs of our particular association?
See, I like the way you framed it that time, Colleen. Suiting the needs is different than tailoring, in my opinion. Because tailoring means, I'm going to go have that suit tailored one time and then hope that I don't, put on pounds or take them off, whichever way do it, right? And so that suit has to be changed. And I think that's an interesting part of when we talk about tailoring processes for an organization. I worry about that. I want them to be poignant. They need to be usable, but they also need to be flexible. And I think Michelle's brought up, a great point in that the big so what about technology has always been, for me, it's technology is to be an enabler. Right? It's an enabler of doing whatever we need to do, whether it's what we're doing right now, being able to have this larger conversation of 20 people or so without having to gather in a room somewhere. It certainly enabled the ability for us to spread those things out. But, Mark mentioned earlier something about Power Automate, which is, part of a greater group of intelligent automation or robotic process automation. That's a great example, Michelle, of being able to take, and we've done this a bunch at UDIG, where we've helped companies take a look at what their processes are and say, well, this is a high productivity person. This person cost us a lot of time, a lot of tribal knowledge. They are key to our operation, and we've got them scraping stuff out of this Excel spreadsheet and hand keying it into this system because for whatever reason, we can't make this thing talk. So technologies are out there that can help do those things. I think that what I believe an efficient organization would do is really to start benchmarking itself, against other organizations and learn about how they aren't really that unique butterfly that they may think they are. There are answers to some of the things that they're out there, but if there does come a point where it's like, well, we are so different, that's something that, if tailoring equals writing it down so that you know how to do it over and over, then I'll buy that for $1. But we need to make sure that we keep those processes fluent and flexible as our businesses change. Certainly kind of ties into everything else we're talking about as things are moving, and technology can help with that, obviously. So I think that's where I'd leave that one.
Great. Thank you, Todd. All right, Mark, over to you. How can we make sure that the processes we're putting in place are really what's right for our association?
Yeah. I would say involve as many people as possible, because every person's voice matters and they have unique perspectives, right? So I remember one time going through kind of an exercise where we were in a room and they showed a picture and they all had us look at it, right? And we thought we were seeing the whole picture. And then the next slide showed, so we were just kind of zoomed into this one little part, right? And so I think sometimes we think we see the whole picture, but we don't even have any appreciation that we're not. So on the Bell Highway side of our business, we work a lot with chapter-based organizations. And I tell people all the time, the best way to have a for sure failed project for chapters is to not include your chapters in envisioning it, building it, defining it, right? And you're like, what do you mean you don't like it? We did this for you, right? But we didn't involve them. And the same way works for our staff, right? So we have an Impexium client that has been on the same AMS for 20 years, a new client that's just starting to go into implementation. And one of the key things that the leadership said is we want to use this opportunity to reevaluate our processes. We don't want to just replace what we've always done, because what we've always done, we've kind of built because of the limitations that our AMS had. And now that we have one that doesn't have those limitations, we don't want to do it just the same way we always have. But we will have staff that want to do it the same way that we always have, because that's what they know, right? And so I thought that was really insightful, first to understand, the whole desire not to just do it the same way, but also to realize that there will be staff that will, because nobody, none of us like change, right? Maybe some of us do. So I think it's just really staying close to your people, and helping them move through the process, right, at the pace that they're able to move.
Thank you, Mark. All right, we are getting to the end of our panel. And so I want our audience to know that if we have not answered the burning topic that you had, maybe it was very personal to your organization, you didn't want to submit it, or you're not joining us live, we want to make sure we get your question answered. So a survey just dropped in the chat from the Team NXUnite username, where we've asked you to let us know if you have a lingering question so we can connect you with the panelist who can best answer your question. So fill that out if there's anything that we haven't discussed that you were really hoping would come up today, or you just want to get put in touch with one of our panelists. All right, I have one final question for each of our panelists, but we only have 6 minutes left. So I'm going to ask this to be a bit of a speed round with our panelists. So just a short and simple taste of maybe what your full answer would be. But Todd, I'm going to have you start us off. As Mark was just mentioning, changes can kind of impact everyone in the organization. So what strategies do you recommend when we're trying to make sure that we're getting buy-in on one of the changes we've made?
I think Mark hit it. I think he's got it right. I mean, we talk a lot about inclusion, right? And this is an inclusion item. This is one of those things of, if you're going to make change in your organization, that you do have to hear all the voices. And while it costs you nothing but time, and look, I know that's in some organizations, a lot of people feel that's the most expensive thing, but it's worthy. It's worthy of the time to do that. One of the things that, I'm sure we've all heard this, but, call them focus groups, call whatever, but, going all the way back to, changing websites. When I worked at the Internet Society or other organizations, we were going to roll out a new website. Part of that process was when we had a point where we thought we've got pretty much everything we think needs to be in there. Now we need to go challenge that by having members, bang up against it and look for stuff and search, and I can't find this, or I can't find that, or I like that color, I don't like that color. And you have to be open to even the nitpicky little things. You have to be open to listening to those things, because they can derail a project. I mean, pick any project you want, putting a new platform like Matchbox on, or rolling out Bell Highway, or anything that we've done. UDIG, any of these things can be derailed by little nitty things, by not bringing folks in at the right point. So I would say certainly bringing folks in. Yeah.
Thank you, Todd. All right, Mark, I know you started to answer this, but anything you would add in terms of getting team buy-in?
Yeah, I always find that whenever I listen to Todd, he's just so spot on. So it's hard for me to add to that. The things that come to my mind are that Todd hasn't already said is documentation, right? So clearly document, this is what we heard, right? This is the solution that we agreed to, getting that buy-in and having it documented, right? So you have just kind of a historical record of how did we get here and why, and what are we all agreeing to? I know at Impexium, we have a whole team that helps our clients through a business process review to look at their processes and look for areas that will create efficiencies based upon the technology that we're implementing. They can do journey mapping exercises. I mean, what AMS does stuff like that, right? But we recognize that the importance of change management, because what happens if you don't do that is you roll out a new technology and you have people that don't use it because, as Todd said, they weren't included along the way and their voice wasn't heard. And then that makes me think, well, I don't matter to this organization, right? And then you start to get into, a downward cycle that impacts a whole lot more than, you start out with all these great intentions and you wind up actually doing harm, right? So just inclusion, change management, documentation, making people feel heard and valued. We talk a lot about technology, but technology doesn't work unless we have a culture with our people that feel like they're working at a place where they're making a difference, where they're feeling fulfilled, where they have purpose, right, as people. And as leaders, we have so much power to help our people feel that.
Thank you, Mark. All right, Michelle, final thoughts on how we can get that buy-in when we're making a change.
I'm going to try and be super, super quick. Mark and Todd have covered everything, I think, from the staff and member experience. I'd like to maybe kind of look to the other side. If you are a staff member in an association and you have a great idea that you are trying to get buy-in for, one of the things we've done an awful lot of work this year, talking to our clients in the association community, really trying to understand from our perspective, why people aren't using virtual more to do things like, new member orientation or volunteer training or things like that, where they could reach a wider audience and gather in more of those voices. And a lot of the times what came back to it was that people are wary of virtual after COVID and they won't get budget and the executive team won't do it. So what we've tried to do is to help people to be able to position it differently. So, a lot of people say, we talked about the pandemic moved to virtual very quickly and they didn't have a plan. And so things didn't turn out so great, But if you can, again, going back to the previous point, think of what is the objectives that you're trying to achieve by doing this. And that always leads to, how are we going to measure the success of this new initiative or this new technology that we're going to adopt? And can you lay that out clearly in a way that you can bring that to your board or to your executive team and say, we have a great new idea. We'd really like to adopt this new technology, or we'd really like to start this new program. And these are the things that we hope to measure. And what we're going to do is we're going to pilot it. And I've learned from my association colleagues that this is a magic word because it opens up the possibility of trying something and not expecting it to succeed or fail. It's a learning opportunity. And so if you approach launching a new project, a new initiative, taking on a new technology from the perspective of it being a pilot, you're open to measuring, to seeing what worked, to seeing what didn't, to seeing what you could try the next time, and basically being ready to adapt, as Todd said earlier, or ready to react to new things that come up in your path, but being open-minded. And I think that's the best way that we can approach all of this, and hopefully secure the buy-in. I hear that's the magic word to try.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Michelle. I do know we have hit time, so if any of our panelists need to run to another meeting, I'll be wrapping up in 1 minute, but do what you need to do. I want to give a huge thank you to our panelists. This has been a really insightful session and I learned a ton, so thank you all so much for your time. I also want to give a huge thank you to our audience, whether you joined us live or you're watching the recording. Appreciate your time. Thanks for learning with us. Hope you can take what you learned today and help it support the work that you're already doing. You're doing great. We're rooting for you and we can't wait to see all that you're going to accomplish in 2024. Very quickly, I do want to mention that we have a packed kind of winter and spring, and we're already starting to plan summer of panel sessions and webinars and demos ahead of us. So keep your eye out on the NXUnite website and the NXUnite LinkedIn for upcoming events that might be relevant to you and your team. We'll have many association-specific panels, but also kind of broader panels that might still be of interest to your team. So keep your eye out for what might be helpful. All right, that is it for me. Again, a huge thank you to our panelists, and I hope you all have a nice rest of your day. Bye, everyone. Thank you.